But we begin tonight with week 2 of testimony in Donald Trump's hush money election interference trial. For the first time, one of Trump's family members, middle son Eric, joined him in the courtroom along with some of Trump's associates. It also appears that Trump's repeated pleas for his supporters to please come to his aid worked, with a few dozen appearing outside the court. It is unknown if any of those supposed supporters also carry a SAG card. But those may be the only highlights to Trump's day, given what transpired inside the courtroom. Most of the day was spent hearing from Keith Davidson, the former attorney for both Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels. Davidson is a key player in the scheme and alleged conspiracy to pay off the two women to keep their stories about their alleged sexual encounters with Trump from going public before the 2016 election. The prosecution did not just rely on Davidson's testimony, but also his text messages and emails from that time. Text messages between Davidson and the editor of the National Enquirer, Dylan Howard, detailed the deal made with McDougal, beginning with, "I have a blockbuster Trump story." Upon finalizing the agreement, Howard texted Davidson, quote, "We are going to lay it on thick for her." Davidson replied, "Good. Throw in an ambassadorship for me. I'm thinking Isle of Man." Today, Davidson testified that his comment was something of a joke, but he sent it because he knew the deal would help Trump's candidacy. The texts between the two also lay out the impact of Stormy Daniels' reemergence in the days following the October 2016 release of the Access Hollywood tape. Davidson texted Howard on October 8th. "Trump is effed," with Howard responding, "Wave the white flag. It's over, people." The next day, Davidson texted, "Hi, the story is already out there." To which Howard responded, "Yeah, but her talking and taking blank is the final nail in the coffin, but he's effed already." Davidson testified on how Michael Cohen missed deadlines to make the $130,000 payment to Daniels, with Davidson recalling Cohen saying, "What do you expect me to do? My guy's in 5 effing states today." My guy, of course, referring to Donald Trump. It was then, Davidson claims, that Cohen said he would just pay it himself. And that is how Cohen came to pay out the money by taking out a home equity line of credit. And that also brings us to the other witnesses we heard from this morning who were brought on to authenticate various records. That included continued testimony from one of Cohen's bankers, Gary Farrow, who we started to hear from on Friday. He provided the receipts on how Cohen moved fast and furious less than 2 weeks before the 2016 election to both set up an account and complete the wire transfer to Stormy Daniels with Keith Davidson for the $130,000 in hush money. And that payment could not have come quickly enough, as Davidson also presented emails stating that 10 days prior to that wire transfer, and after much delay, Stormy Daniels was going to cancel the settlement agreement altogether. Now, someone may need to tell Trump about all these developments, given that his eyes were closed for extended periods throughout the day, again, creating the appearance that has led to folks calling him Sleepy Don. But before Trump started to reach that slumbered state, he was told by Judge Juan Marchand that he was being held in criminal contempt for violating the gag order with his attacks on the jurors and potential witnesses. While he was only fined $1,000 for each of the 9 violations, Marchand warned in the decision that he would not tolerate further violations of the order and said if necessary and appropriate under the circumstances, he would impose an incarceratory punishment on the former president, meaning jail. When the trial resumes on Thursday, it will begin with another hearing over additional alleged gag order violations by Trump. Joining me now is Paul Butler, former federal prosecutor, Georgetown law professor, and MSNBC legal analyst, and Tony Schwartz, CEO of the Energy Project and co-author of Donald Trump's The Art of the Deal. Thank you both for being here. I'm going to start here at the table with you. Let's start with the gag order, Paul. Fines for now, jail later. If he keeps violating it, Donald Trump did take down the offending posts. But is $9,000 a real penalty?
No, not for Donald Trump. It's chump change. He has the biggest megaphone of any criminal defendant in U.S. history, and he uses it to disparage witnesses in violation of the gag order. Maybe it makes political sense. He's got to give his followers some reason to believe that these folks like Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, who could send him to jail or at least cause him to become a convicted criminal. He's got to give his followers a reason not to believe them, but that's in direct contradiction to what the judge has ordered. Joy, any other defendant who willfully disobeyed 9 times, 9 contempt sanctions, would be sitting under Rikers Island right now. So Donald Trump doesn't think of it this way, but this is yet another example of him being treated differently because he's Donald Trump.
Absolutely. What did you think was the most substantive development today? Keith Davidson testifying. He was, of course, the lawyer who arranged the payments. And also you had the banker finishing his testimony about how quickly Michael Cohen acted to create that LLC to sort of make this sort of pretense of a company to send that money to Stormy Daniels.
So as we have to remind everyone, paying hush money isn't a crime.
Right.
What Donald Trump is charged with is falsifying business records that disguise these hush money payments. He did that 34 times, according to Alvin Bragg. That's a misdemeanor, but gets bumped up to a felony if the purpose of these false business records was to try to commit another crime. Alvin Bragg says those other crimes were state and federal campaign violations and also New York tax laws. What does that mean? It means that Alvin Bragg has to prove that this was all about the campaign. And that's what this witness helped do today. So Mr. Davidson was the lawyer for both Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. He testified that all of this was about the campaign. It wasn't, contrary to what Trump wants the jurors to think, about keeping this information from Melania. It wasn't about protecting his family. He's got text messages and emails to prove it. So ultimately, Michael Cohen's going to come and say the same thing. What Bragg is hoping is that Michael Cohen will be the kind of most anticlimactic star witness in history because everything that Cohen says, Alvin Bragg wants the jurors to have heard before from other witnesses.
And it's already been coordinated with, physical testimony and not just that, but also text messages, et cetera. Tony, let me bring you in here. What do you make of the fact that Donald Trump did make an adjustment today, seemingly finally having a family member in court with him so that he wouldn't look alone? I remember being in the courtroom. He definitely looked lonely with that empty bench behind him with no family and no one there, and then Secret Service one row back. So he looked really sort of solitary. What do you make of the fact that Eric Trump showed up today?
Well, I imagine the family drew straws and he lost because nobody would want to be there with him. I think it's irrelevant. I think clearly he made that decision the same way he makes every decision, which is how do I want it to look as opposed to what is it really? I don't think having him there affected it one way or the other. His eyes are closed. He appears to be either sleeping or off in some sort of reverie. And the notion that this guy is having to sit there for 9 hours a day or 8 hours a day is such, for him, a torture that it overshadows everything, Joy, that I think is happening in the trial. This is a man who is demonstrating very clearly why he's not qualified to be president. And meanwhile, if you try to ask yourself the question, what's been a good moment for Trump in this trial? You probably can't come up with one because virtually everything, including all of the testimony today and the fact that he was found to be in contempt, have to militate against him. So I think he is putting on a spectacle.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because there is reporting that he's unhappy with Todd Blanche, his attorney, who, when I saw him in court, he seemed very fidgety and not confident. He's a former federal prosecutor, actually is apparently a good prosecutor at the time. But he wants more aggression out of Todd Blanche. He's not happy with the lack of aggression.
Well, you can't win as a lawyer for Trump, particularly when you're losing, particularly when Trump recognizes that this isn't going his way. Whether it was this lawyer or any other lawyer, this is a really tough case to litigate. It's a really difficult argument to make. You've got a client who's almost impossible to keep in his seat. So I think, assessing his performance is kind of irrelevant. I think the issue is that Trump is going to beat up on anybody who's falling short of making him look innocent in a situation in which he is guilty as hell.
Let me play a little bit. So there was an interesting thing that happened, Paul, today. They played some C-SPAN archives. Let me play a little bit of what they showed in court today.
It's a phony deal. I have no idea who these women are. Have no idea. I have no idea. And I think you all know I have no idea because you understand me for a lot of years, okay? When you looked at that horrible woman last night, you said, I don't think so. I don't think so. Whoever she is, wherever she comes from, the stories are total fiction. They're 100% made up. They never happened. They never would happen. They're all horrible lies, all fabrications, and we can't let them change the most important election in our lifetime.
Michael Cohen is a very talented lawyer.
What do you think why did the prosecution play that?
Well, it's Trump's voice in court. This is the first time the jury has actually heard what Donald Trump sounds like and what's he doing. He's lying. So, first of all, I don't see how he takes the stand because he's going to be able to be impeached with his lies and with his misconduct. He says he didn't cheat on his wife. And again, that's not a crime. But if he's making that assertion to try to prove his innocence or at least get the jury to find him not guilty, then the jury's not going to like him very much. Again, if he sticks by that statement, so then he'll be in that classic position where the prosecutor says, well, were you lying then when you said it was a lie, or are you lying now when you said it wasn't a lie? So part of it, again, is to kind of prevent Trump from taking the stand, although in some ways prosecutors would love that because then all of this other evidence comes in.